You right. But I'm thinking, right? Speak your truth. We are here with Ms Kristeena Alexander. We just had some struggles getting in the Zoom, but we here now. We excited. How you feeling? Let the audience know how you feeling.
I'm amazing. Listen, I'm excited to be a guest here and excited to share whatever it is that you would want to know. And yeah, it's a glorious Saturday. Let's go.
You're right. We here. Like you said, we always ready. So let's get into it. Let's start with your background. Let's talk about where you're from, get into your basketball career, and who are you today?
Yes. We need more than just the 30 minutes or the 45 that you're really asking, but we'll start somewhere.
Okay.
So I'm originally from New York. I'm from Long Island, Hempstead, represent Strong Island, as some of us folk would say. And basketball's been a part of my life since I was 4. I have a twin brother, and my father put a ball in our hands when we were 4. So we've played numerous sports, basketball, soccer. Actually, basketball wasn't my first sport. Soccer was. Really? But basketball withstood everything. So I've been playing since I was 4 and went to Christ the King High School, the infamous. Yes.
Yeah, everybody knows.
A lot of us, of course, right. Got to put them on the map. And then went off to college, played at George Mason my freshman year, and played at George Washington, finished up there my career, went overseas, and then I played in the WNBA for the Mystics. So my basketball career, I mean, so many people, so many lessons learned, so many teammates, so many just people that are poured into my life to allow me to become the woman I am today. So that in and of itself, basketball has absolutely been that vehicle. As far as who I am today, I spent 10 years coaching, and shout out to, Mason, shout out to Debbie Tannehill, gave him my first gig. Shout out to my alma mater, George Washington. I coached at St. Francis, PA, UNC Greensboro, all my peoples. And then, of course, I finished up at Providence College. Okay. So I spent 10 years giving back to something that meant so much. Didn't really realize how much of an impact I was making as a coach when I look back now, being out the game almost 7 or 8 years at the collegiate level, and then transitioning into business, the corporate structure. So I've been fortunate, and now what I do is consulting. I share now. I always talk about giving and replenishing and giving more. That's what I do. So coaching never really ends, but I don't do it, between those 4 lines at 94 feet per se.
So what made you transition into this new style of coaching that you're doing?
Transition is an everyday, lifelong thing. When we talk about transitions, we talk about, whether it's a young person transitioning to the high school and adolescence and going from high school to college, you're an adult now. And then when school is done at 4 or 5 years in college, you get into the adult world, and now it's time for you to get a job. We're always transitioning, whether that's from last Sunday to today, which is Saturday. We transition from the people that we meet, whether I'm giving more or you're taking. That's okay. You always got to have 3 different friends, someone that's equal, someone that's above you, someone that's beneath you. So transition for me is something that happens every single day, whether it's a thought, whether it's an idea I have, and I'm transitioning from being stagnant or transitioning from being highly creative to somewhere in the middle. So for me, I think it was inevitable, just my spirit, just who I am as a leader, someone that always, if you give me the task, we're going to complete it. Execution is important for me. I played point guard. So I'm not waiting for someone to start the break. Oh, you're going to run the break. Yeah. And if you want the ball, you're going to get out in front. I'm going to give it to you where you can score, put you in a position to be successful. And that's something that's just translated on and off the court my entire life.
Are there any differences between what you did as a D1 coach versus what you do now? Or do you think that your basketball career in general as a player and a coach prepared you to do this, to do an amazing job at what you do now?
Absolutely. Right now I consult individuals who might not understand, okay, what's the next step? I've got a ton of players who say, Coach, I need a job. Well, you don't need a job. You need a career. You need something that you love when you wake up in the morning. And these are cliches, something that you love to do. And if you never got paid to do it, you do it anyway. So, for me, it's something that I think was always in me. Thanks, shout out to my parents and to my village. There's a lot of people who poured into me as a young person, but I just think now it comes to fruition in certain instances, different clientele. different scenarios, whether it's someone who's trying to lose 40 pounds or someone that's just trying to mentally get into a better headspace as they take on a different project. So
Sure.
either way, I try to just meet them where they are and then, allow them to see what's possible.
Exactly. Can you talk about the transition? So how difficult it is coming out of school or, professional basketball. And now, like you said, you have to get out here in this real world. Many people don't think that, it's that big of an issue, especially us as athletes. We just think life all hunky dory out here, and then we get out here and it's not like that. So what do you find? Let me ask you this. What do you find most common with these kids or young people who are coming out of school or the pros and their unpreparedness for what's next?
I think first and foremost, their superpower, really understanding who you are and
Mhm.
what value you bring to the table. In a speech, or I should say, an online presentation that I had given not too long ago to a group of young ladies, I asked them, "So, what's your strength?"
Mhm.
Because everyone can tell me what they're not good at. Well, I don't do this. I don't. But wait, what are you good at? Like, what separates you from the next person? And I
Mhm.
think that most important, it allows you a starting point. If you're great or good at this, then keep doing that. Like,
Mhm.
manifest that, do more of it and help more people, give
Yeah.
more of it to more people. I think another aspect is having that, and again, it's cliche, having that determination, that confidence.
Mhm.
It's if I could bottle it up and put it down at CVS and Walgreens, I mean, we wouldn't be on this podcast right now. And so I think the confidence factor, you have to have, and this is one of the things that I do. I shout out to Morning Nugget. That's what I do every morning. Put it
Right.
on my social media. Is really having that positive self-talk. You've got to be your biggest cheerleader. You've got to be your mother, your father, your guardian, whomever. You've got to say those positive affirmations. And and again, it sounds cliche because there are about a million people who will tell you just say it, but it's really, really impactful. And it
Mhm.
helps when you get to those spaces where you're unsure, or maybe you're not seeing as much growth or success.
Mhm.
Like, you've got to keep talking to yourself to say, hey, I'm here. I
Ex-
want to be here, and I'm going to continue to not hustle, but plug away. I'm going to continue to give, take, maybe remove, sidestep, jab step, pump fake, and still get to the cup. So I think the one is knowing who you are, that superpower, that superhero, and then really that confidence factor.
How can one know who they are or get to know who they are, especially once their identity goes from, I'm an athlete or student athlete to now I'm just, who am I?
I think it's important that as a student athlete, and we'll take that scenario for a young lady, and I deal mostly my clients are females. I've got a few guys. When
Okay.
we look at those 4 or 5 years, there's countless memories. Whether it's the first day of practice, that game where you had 20 and 10, or whether it was 8 steals, like those memories are your experience.
Mhm.
That is your expertise.
Mhm.
So when you say, well, how do I know? It's your story. Well,
Yeah.
then you got to ask yourself, okay, well, how did I get here? How did I get to these 4 years? Why did I go to this school? I went to the school because of the colors. No problem. When you put the colors on, how did you feel?
Mhm.
That feeling is special to you, is unique to your story. Because when you put those colors on, you felt like you could go out and do anything.
Mhm.
Well, the other young lady that's coming behind you is thinking, well, how do I get to that feeling? Put the colors on, come to this school.
Mhm.
And then you got to do a couple other things too, in regards to the education piece and the communication and relationship with the coaches. But those memories, those feelings that you had with your experience, that's how you begin to outline or identify who you are. Like,
Yeah.
because no one can take that from you. And I think that's what makes you uniquely you, is
Yeah.
when you could really go back and say, well, I remember freshman year when I was all state or whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
That's what makes you who you are. And then once and we can go down to the basics. You can jot those things down. You
Mhm.
can write it on a piece of paper and then look at it and say, okay, this is what I've become. 4 years I spent in college, 5 years I got my degree. Some people get a master's. That's your superpower. How many
Mhm.
Americans don't even get to college, don't have a second degree, so I think you've got to really go back to what you spent your last 4 or 5 years doing. What have you maximized all of your time doing? Because the things we do the most are who we've become.
Exactly.
You don't do, it's 24 hours in a day. Everybody gets 24 hours. You don't do something for 12 hours and go, it was just a hobby.
Mm-hmm. Man, I said it about my podcast. I work on it all day, every day, and I keep trying to make it a side thing. But I'm like, no, if this is like what I love to do, and it's like happens so naturally, like I gotta give into it. I
It's
don't
you.
know.
It's speaking to you. You've got to just allow it to take its course, because that's what it's doing. It's letting you know, no, this is your space.
Exactly. And that's hard because basketball was my space. So I'm like, I'm trying to figure out all these other things. I started the clothing line and it's hard to let things go in that sense. Like, I want to do it again, but this is what is working, like you said. And it's like, I wasn't planning on doing this. What's going on? But I love it though.
That's okay, because letting go is a part of the growth process, is a part of really trying to figure out, as you continue to climb your own personal journey, you're going to have to let go of some people. You're going to have to let go of some business deals. You're going to have to let go of, some decisions that maybe you wanted to do or can't do. So it's preparing you in a sense. And as an athlete, I won't say unfortunately, but fortunately, we spend so much time honing a specific craft. And we're always like, it's basketball. I want to play basketball until the day I die. We all said that. And I think it's important that we realize that's okay. That some people will play until the wheels fall off. Amen. But there's always going to be a new chapter when that chapter arrives. Because if we had an idea of when that chapter was going to arrive, if somebody told you when you was 18, okay, you're going to play till you're 22, and at 22, in the month of August, on the 14th at 12 a.m., you're done. What would you do differently? Like, what would you do differently if somebody said, all right, listen, you're great right now. I'm going to give you 5 years to do this podcast, and then you're going to have to sell it. And when you sell it, you're only going to get half. Like, does that mean you stop doing it? That just means you're like, wait, I'm going to continue to do this to the fullest that I possibly can and try to encourage as many people and impact their lives. So, it's again a cliche. You got to have plan B, but understanding that it's okay to close that chapter and then allow it to be an inspiration for someone else to be able to tell your story later on.
For sure. Can you talk about, because you've been mentioning your tribe, your village, your parents, how did they impact you to be the woman that you are today?
They started it. They started the process. So I have two brothers. My oldest brother, I would like to say he introduced me to basketball. He played in the backyard, and I'm looking at him like, wow, I want to play basketball.
Yeah.
And my parents, my mother was not an athlete, so I did not get it from her. My mother came run for a lick. No, she cannot. But my father was someone who you couldn't tell him no. And I definitely have that in me. You can't tell me no. I don't care who you are. You could be 6'8". It doesn't matter. I'm gonna find a way. So for him, he wasn't the most educated. He wasn't the most athletically gifted. Like my father claims he played sports. No. But I think when you plant that seed in young people early on that they can do anything, it just it no longer becomes a speed bump or a hurdle. And as far as my village, I've had, my high school coaches, we were doing college practices in high school. We had, school ended at 3. We didn't have practice till 7. We had to do our work. My teammates, we had to sit in study hall. My coach was our chemistry teacher. We had routines, we had schedules. So we were already being prepared for what college was to offer. So when I got to college, it wasn't a surprise to me. I understood how to take direction. I understood this is what needs to be done. You have to sacrifice. There was no parties and we're trying to get a scholarship to college. When I got to college, it was, I want to play professionally. And I, shout out to all of the coaches that I had, the strong females, the Black females. I mean, they showed me how to appreciate who I was in quote unquote college. I went to a school that there weren't many young ladies that looked like me, but they took it, instead of it being a negative, made it, an advantage, something that was special. So shout out, to Kathy Wilson, rest in peace, Tori Harrison. Those women had such an impact early on in my collegiate career that when I became a coach, I tried to channel the things that they said and did, and the way that they moved and the way that they said things. And even when they were around male counterparts, or white or black or whatever situation. When they recruited young ladies, when I recruited players, it was always about family. I didn't recruit you if you didn't have two people in your household that were that the focus wasn't education, and what if something was to go wrong, that I couldn't count on you. And so, shout out to all the young ladies that I've recruited. The village is important. Even now, talking about the bosses that I've had, the people that said, I see something in you. And yeah, sometimes they're like, I don't like everything about you, but I see something that I want to latch on and help you prosper and move and kind of continue to develop. And so it's been a lot of people. I mean, I could sit here and thank all of them, but I think I try to make it a point every now and again just to say thank you to them.
Yes, that's beautiful. I love it. And I was gonna say, you giving out so many shout outs, like that's
got to listen. I'm not here just, it's definitely not just me. No way, not at all.
And I love that. I really, really love that about you. That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. What type of difference does it make in these athletes' lives to have you as their coach that's not their sport coach?
I think it's important. I think what's at an all-time low, and it's unfortunate when you see, and we can talk forever about social media, the effects, just music these days. Mentorship is something that I don't know enough people talk about, but for me, it's critical. It's crucial because it's one thing to have a coach. I had coaches. It's one thing to have parents. I had both of those too. I had siblings. But when you're talking about a mentor, this is someone who is not blood related most of the time, but someone that has either had the same experience that you're going through or someone that can add value to what you're currently going through. And I think it's important to have that because you're going to at some point hit that speed bump. And I say speed bump because it's small enough but big enough. And the mentorship is what I provide now because I know that some of the challenges that I went through in my career and in coaching and in business now, if I had more mentors, question mark, ... So I think the mentorship is key. It's what I provide. And I think it's important because, a lot of people are going through a lot of things and you want someone you can trust. You want someone who's been there, done that. You would never buy a house from someone who's not a real estate agent. Exactly. You would never go to a hospital for someone who's not a doctor. So why do we do that in other industries? Why do we ask people questions that haven't done that, haven't experienced it? Not that they can't offer any value, but why not go to somebody who has been there and done that? It can offer you real life stories.
Exactly. I agree 1000%. I'm all for people going to school and all of that, but there's nothing that compares to real life experience. You can read a book all you want to, read Google all you want to, but if you ain't been through something, man, you cannot really, relate, period. You cannot relate to a person. And I would never be no longer be ashamed about my journey and my experience because I wouldn't be able to connect with people the way that I do if I didn't go through any of the things that I've been through, no matter how bad they were.
Absolutely. I don't think we would be here today. I mean,
no,
I'm still kind of wondering, how we got to this point in terms of how you found me. But if basketball is our connection, then so be it. Without it, you'd have just been that other podcast.
Exactly. So it was basketball, and I saw that you do consulting for student athletes, and that's something that I've been thinking about doing. And I'm like, well, I don't think I'm prepared because I'm still I feel like I'm still growing up. But I think it is so important because that's something that I needed. I still need mentors, need coaches, need, sometimes need my mom. You know what I'm saying? We just need people, like you said, that guidance. And typically it isn't from blood related people. I have found my tribe from other Black women like you, older women who I have no idea who y'all are or didn't know you before my podcast, but it was like that. It was something that connected us, something I found that could connect us. And since we got on the call and I saw you and I was like, oh yeah, even before when I saw you on LinkedIn, I was like, I definitely have to talk to her. I want to know your story. And like you said, we probably gonna need 3 hours or maybe 3 different episodes.
Here we go.
Yeah, I want to know you and why, because, and this is what I'm about to ask you is why did you choose, I kind of asked you earlier, but what really made you want to give back to your sport and to other athletes?
That's a great question. I think it was probably in my 4th or 5th year coaching is when I realized that I wanted to be different than what I had experienced. I had experienced different types of head coaches and assistants, whether it was was learning what not to do or what to do. And so I decided that I wanted to do more. I'm always, let's run it down and back in 10 seconds. I'm like, wait, well, can we do it in 8?
Yeah.
Why do we need 3 hours, coach? If we can get it done in 2, can we leave? That way I can work on ball handling or free throws or whatever the case. So for me, that has always been just my own personality. And I just think that, I wanted to give back to something that's been instrumental for so long because I see the need, being an assistant, being a coach, you see so much happening, but the NCAA will hinder you at times. The rules and regulations are what they are. And to go outside of them means you're breaking them. And so that was one of the reasons why I decided to start my own business in 2014. It was named Progress Recruiting at the time.
Okay.
Since then, it's transitioned. The iteration now is KristeenaAlexander.com. But it was something that I wanted to do more on a one-on-one basis because of the numerous conversations that I had with student athletes and then their parents, really understanding what their concerns were, what their worries, their fears, what their excitement was. There's no way that I could spend the kind of time that I saw that needed to happen. And so there's no way that I could be able to do that within those NCAA rules and regulations. You can only call them at certain times and you got to share a kid. And, if the kid only wanted to talk to me, what was I going to do? Like we had a connection. So I decided to start my own business. And that's when I realized that I could continue to make an impact because for me, I'm grateful. I mean, I am. And I think all of us have that in us to be grateful. But I said to myself that I could do more. I could do something. And if it only helps 4 or 5 people, then that's enough for me. Because, we never won a national championship in any of the schools that I coached at. But I can go back to those young ladies now, and some of them are coaching, some of them aren't. But the lessons that I was trying to teach them now, to see them in their own personal spaces, whether they're in business. Some of them are actually one of them is a head coach. It's an interesting story. It's almost like that was it. That was my job. That was my role. Kudos, pat on the back, move on to the next person. So that's why.
Tell us that story. What's so interesting about it?
It's interesting because I was just talking to a former player of mine. I'm gonna give them all shout out. So shout out to Bree, my NOLA connection. Yeah. So there was a young lady when I was at George Washington. She's currently the head coach at Fisk University. And this young lady, she was a point guard from New York. So I knew, she had that New York mentality. And it was a struggle. It was a struggle to get her to really understand what we were doing at GW, what it took to be successful, not just on the court, but off the court, the communication, what was needed as a point guard, and how she was to lead her team. It was a struggle. I said, this kid, she's not ready for this level. She's not. It didn't really help us as a staff. And we bumped heads. And any coach would tell you every kid is not going to be perfect. And it wasn't until, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 years later, I saw her and she said, you know what, Coach K, I just want to say thank you because I know that you were trying to help me. And that's something for a kid to say when they're in college. They're not going to say that. Well, some may, but it was nice she knew that none of it was ever personal, that it was always about wanting to just help her get to a certain space in her life. And to know that she's the head coach now, shout out to Janine Davis on that one. That's because awesome. I remember those conversations, just, point guard conversations and like, what is she doing? Why is she doing it? Asking those questions. But she has, and again, I haven't spoken to her in a while, but I know that she is doing well and she's impacting women's lives. And without that time frame, I don't know where she would have been. I'm sure her parents are happy, her family, she changed the trajectory of her life, and that's a success story. And that for me is good enough. She don't have to dribble another basketball. We don't have to meet up at West 4th. We don't have to talk to none of our New York folks to know that she has gotten to a space where she can do something she loves, and she's just, keeping the ball rolling. So, for sure. Yeah.
Receiving a text like that, even though, like you said, it was so many years later, how does that make you feel?
I mean, I'm doing my gift. I know what that is. I'm doing something that's helping the next person, and it makes you happy, it makes you smile, it makes you really appreciate that you have this gift, that you have this opportunity, and don't take it lightly. And I know that everyone doesn't have that privilege. And so I just try to do what I can with what I can. And folks who know me know you're gonna get more than 110. I mean,
I
what we talking about, right?
love
Success. Let's do it. Let's execute. So what I tell my kids now. Are you executing? Right. Come on.
it.
Are you receiving?
I gotta write that down. Ooh, am I executed?
Are you executing? Right.
Ooh.
The word execute, you don't go, well, 20%. Either you did or you did not.
Yeah,
There's no
dang.
trying.
You just put all the pressure on me. Am I execute? That's what I'm about to ask myself every day. All
Are you
right,
executing?
that's deep. That's yeah. All right, this my because you just blew my whole Saturday up. My
It's all
mind.
good. It's all good.
Yeah, it is great because now like I really am gonna have to ask myself. Even when I get in bed, I'm gonna say, did I execute today? And if I did, I'm gonna have to get back up, stay up a couple hours.
And that can mean that could mean you did laundry. Doesn't mean you have to, be on Bezos level or Zuckerberg. Did you finish the laundry? Did you make all the phone calls? Did you reply to all the emails? That's executing, because it's taking you to the next step. And then
Exactly.
as long as you take the next step, you got to continue to just move forward. So
Yes, I think even for some people, and I can even speak from my own experience with mental health, getting out the bed, showering some days, checking the email in the first place, that is execution. Like
mhm.
I definitely know that from personal experience. So we're talking about mental health. What advice would you have for some current athletes who are struggling with their mental health as they are trying to, perform and grow in their careers as athletes?
Ooh, that's a great question. Because I think mental health now is different than when I was in school.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is it's talked about, it's acknowledged. There are resources for it. Whereas, back in, I mean, yeah, I played in the 90s, 2000, mental health, we were just, no, we weren't talking about it. So I would encourage student athletes to utilize those resources, utilize the people who can help get you the help that you don't know you need, think you need, and absolutely need.
Mm,
Sometimes we may be stuck in one of those three spaces. I
mhm.
don't know, I do know, I'm not sure, and I absolutely need it. I think it's important to take that first step. And it could be, your best friend, it could be your coach, it can be a teacher, it could be anybody, but somebody at least has a link or a conversation or an email or a text or something that can at least get you in front of someone with some expertise to help address your situation, whatever it may be. I think mental health is something that is real,
Mhm.
that is important, and not just for student athletes, for just individuals overall.
Mhm.
It's important that we recognize anything could be triggering.
Yeah.
And depending on whatever your situation is, you have to understand when you are triggered and what you're going to do to address that. And so, I don't take it lightly. Mental health is very key, very, very important. But you gotta seek resources. You gotta seek the people who are trained to address whatever situation you're going through.
That's real. And again,
Shout out to my therapist.
I'm about to say from experience, I wouldn't be here right now
Shout out,
without therapy for real.
shout
Yeah,
out to her.
man, therapist, man. If you don't mind me asking, is your therapist a woman of color also?
Absolutely.
And why? Tell us why. I know why, but tell us why.
I think it's just a preference. It's just a choice.
Okay.
We make choices in every day. When we go to the supermarket, we pick the avocados, the darker ones than the lighter ones, the bananas. Nobody wants brown specks on their bananas, the blueberries, the strawberries. So for me, a therapist was someone that I could connect with, someone that looked like me, someone that could really speak to some of the issues that I was going through and that I'm currently going through. And it was probably one of the top three decisions that I made in my life, was to seek out someone with that expertise that could continue to help me guide and manage the load of life itself. Like, life is a four-letter word, but at times it feels like it's 52 letters. And so, yeah, I wanted a female. Just a preference that I went with.
I love it. I love it. I agree. Relatability is key. My first therapist was a white woman, and she did her job. She was great, but there wasn't that connection. And I just feel like I was talking to, some random person that really don't care about what I'm going through. But when I met my therapist in Chicago, that was auntie, man. It was sometimes I was in therapy. Like I was just talking, and it felt beautiful to have that. And so I agree. And it doesn't matter what race you are, nationality, gender, like
Relatable.
somebody you can connect with. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Ms. Kristeena. Anything else you want to leave us with? Because you got all these nuggets.
I got all the, well, I mean, I want folks to go ahead and log in. Come on Instagram, Twitter, Kristeena_Alexander, Kristeena.Alexander. Make sure you put 2 E's in that first name. Kristeena, do not give me an I or a Y. And you can check me out, KristeenaAlexander.com. Yeah.
Love it. I'm gonna make sure I put all it in the show notes. So email me all of that. And I'm gonna follow you today too. I gotta get
show
on.
love. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. It was pure love. This was dope. It was, honestly better, not better in the sense I think he's gonna do good, but definitely a much better connection. I never know I'm gonna connect with people, but
right.
I love it. This was dope. Thank you.
Likewise, sister. Likewise.